What's up, everybody? Mike Golic Jr. here, back for another weekend of Bleacher Report's college football recap. Here, as we are now every Tuesday, 6 o'clock Eastern, on the BR app, on the BR YouTube channel, anywhere you can check us out. As always, follow along with Chad as we look back at the weekend that was in college football. Week 7 already flying by. Always love hearing from you guys and the takes as we go on throughout the show. So hit us up here. Our producer Ryan will get those to me, and we'll try and get them answered as best we can. Because we're getting to that time of year where we keep waiting for the wheat to separate from the chaff. And if anything, the sport gets more complicated. This is as much parity as we've had in the sport in years. And we got some new contenders in the mix. So with that, let's get it started. Take a look at the AP poll for this week and the most noteworthy outcome, obviously, of this last weekend's games. Indiana gets their big-time win. Finally, Curt Cignetti and them boys go on the road, beat a top 10 team in Oregon, and now find themselves up at number 3 in the country because of that. So your new top 5, Ohio State and Miami still at 1-2. But Indiana moves up to 3, Texas A&M at 4, and Ole Miss down a spot to 5. Alabama working their way back into things, followed by Texas Tech, Oregon, Georgia, and LSU. So obviously the big one in this is Indiana, and this was the proof of concept. Curt Cignetti and this team and this program had a lot of people talk about how they feasted on easy competition last year, what it looked like against Ohio State and Notre Dame in the regular season in the CFP. And now they go out against an Oregon team that I understand the way people view Penn State now in light of the most recent news of James Franklin's firing. But 3 weeks ago when that game went down, Penn State, the roster, everything about it, that home environment, still a good win, I think, for Oregon at that point in the season. So Indiana beat a good team, and they beat them the way Curt Cignetti has done, certainly with physicality on both sides of the football, but also now with a quarterback that can just spray it all over the place. We're going to do our quarterback trust tree at the end of this episode, and Fernando Mendoza going to factor prominently into that one. But you look around the rest of this, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, BYU up at 15 after surviving a wild game in Tucson, going into overtime, an incredible back and forth between those two programs. We talked about in this program last week, talking about upset alerts for teams around college football. And I said Arizona's defense against a BYU offense that hasn't really played anybody. Now Kalani Sitake's group gets to check that box off. Bear Bachmeier, that number 47, get a big win there. And boy, oh boy, the Fighting Irish at number 13. And the USC Trojans moving back up. Sets up for a nice ranked matchup for the potential last game of the Notre Dame USC series this weekend. Feels really playoff eliminatory. Also, Texas, welcome back to the top 25. That's a team that got a much-needed monkey off their back. And it comes in a rivalry game. I know people will ask questions about John Mateer. Should he have been out there? The 3 turnovers that ultimately sink their ship. But I think for Texas, you simplified the equation. You got the ball out of Arch's hand quick. I still don't think they're going to work their way back into true contender status for this year, but it was careening towards a pretty dark place. And so I think at least for the week, Texas gets to enjoy it. Roll Tide from Illuminatic. Yeah, listen, Alabama going to be one of the teams that we talk about plenty in this. We have a great breakdown of an impressive throw from Ty Simpson, who continues to go out here and I think defy a lot of the lack of preseason hype around a guy that was a blue chip recruit and just happened to sit behind Jalen Milroe, the incredible athlete that he was. So Texas, I don't know if they're back, but they're back in the top 25, and that's all those fans care about at this point in time. And Georgia inching up a spot here. LSU got a real interesting one. Yeah, shout out to NFL Fan 9. Go Irish. Crimson Fire. FSU proved themselves as flukes. That was an ugly one this weekend. Florida State has some soul searching to do. Thomas Castellanos and the sort of late season decline that we saw at Florida State last year might be creeping in. Bearcats, yes, shout out to Andrew Fedor and the 24th ranked Cincinnati Bearcats. I was aghast last week that Cincinnati beat a ranked Iowa State team and somehow was still outside of the top 25. They hold on, get a win last week, and somehow managed to get it done. So happy for the Bearcats. Utah should be higher. We'll see. They'll have their opportunity. But man, oh man, the Big 12, I get to cover this conference every week for TNT. Fascinating. Texas Tech up top. Survives another game. Baron Morton went down injured in that game. I know there was some shenanigans with the tortillas that became a big topic of conversation with them and Lance Leipold after that game. But that's a club right now on defense you don't want to see. And again, Jalen Daniels is a veteran quarterback. I'm not surprised that Kansas was able to make it interesting. But you look at what David Bailey, that defense, are able to do week in and week out. They are monsters right now. I think David Bailey leads college football in sacks, and most NFL scouts would tell you not all that surprised by that. So an incredible effort from them. Little King. Bama loses to unranked FSU. Oregon loses to number 3 Indiana, and flip-flops. Yeah, listen, Bama also got a win against a ranked Missouri team this week. So I understand the Alabama loss to Florida State is aging like milk, but we know this about college football, right? The rankings tend to forgive earlier losses. Oregon just happened to lose most recently. I still think, guys, remember about the AP poll. You only have to care so much about this. The college football playoff polls are the only ones that really matter. The rest of this is kind of window dressing. Oregon still has all their hopes and dreams in front of them in terms of the conference stuff, in terms of the college football playoff. So you're going to be just fine. We'll get to some stuff we saw in that game, too, that Indiana did to Dante Moore that I think is much more important. We're going to get to Rico Epic about how awesome the Hoosiers are. I got a great breakdown of what their defense was able to do this last weekend to Dante Moore. I agree. Glizzy Goblin, incredible name, by the way. Indiana's legit. They are a legit national title contender. I think you look Ohio State, Miami, and Indiana as the clear upper crust right now. Texas A&M probably should be in that conversation, especially with the way that defense is playing. And I agree, Crimson Fire. Kalen DeBoer, who knew? I only said to everyone that would listen, the guy can coach ball. And a couple of early losses become the story. So that's the AP poll for the week here. Let's get to the big news. Penn State, notably not in the poll. They were out of the poll last week. Them in Texas, preseason 1 and 2 had dropped out. And Penn State goes and loses at home to Northwestern, who for a long time has been the doormat of college football. As a Notre Dame fan that watched Northwestern come into South Bend and beat them in 2014, you know your program is in a rough place when, and as no disrespect, I should probably give Northwestern more credit for how they fought, what Coach Braun has done there, but James Franklin out at Penn State, second largest buyout in college football history behind only Jimbo Fisher. 3 straight losses, Oregon, UCLA after they had fired their head coach, in Northwestern in this season. I'm surprised when it happened because firing a coach in the middle of the season is always a weird bit of math, right? I just covered the Oklahoma State game this last week at home, and it changes so much in your program. It makes life so hard on the players and the coaches that are left behind, and really puts you in limbo for a team that we know is tons of talent, guys that chose to come back and forsake a potential NFL career at the start in order to come back and try and accomplish something at Penn State that now is no longer going to happen for them. But nonetheless, shaking that up now and getting started on that coaching search is going to be really difficult. I want to start off and give some love to Northwestern and some credit to them, what they were able to do and part of how they were able to win this game. Certainly defensively, their effort against Drew Aller and Penn State, but they were able to manufacture the big play that Penn State was not. And we look on early in this game. So let's go to the first play that we have here. Northwestern's big touchdown pass in the second quarter. They take advantage of what we usually see, right? What you usually see on tape from a lot of teams. You're going to get a hard play action sell here. And what usually happens is teams love to get these deep crossers going, try and get guys running into each other at the second level, spring someone open, maybe a quarterback throwback or something like that. Instead, what Northwestern did here is they went double post corners on both sides. So you're going to see both receivers go in like they're starting to go across and then come back out for the corner. This wide receiver is going to get hemmed up a little bit. But over on this side, you're going to see a great route, stick and nod to the outside, and he's going to be wide open here. This defender going to be holding on for dear life. So you run this play now. Hard play action sell. Quarterback turns his back and fires this one wide open on a rope to the end zone. And that's one of the plays that ends up deciding the day. Northwestern able to make the plays that ultimately Penn State wasn't. And that deep passing attack was kind of the area that had always been under fire in the late stage James Franklin, since they brought Andy Kotelnicki over, since Drew Aller took over at quarterback. And man, do we wish Drew Aller well. Heard in the second to last offensive play of the game for Penn State. Brutal for a guy who came back. Shades of, my senior year of college at Notre Dame. Matt Barkley and USC were the number 1 team in the country going into the season. Matt Barkley was supposed to be the next quarterback to take the step at USC. They brought 17 starters back. So much of it parallels what we saw from this year's Penn State program that now has a lot of searching to do. Darrell Keller asks, who is the next coach at Penn State? Well, I'll take a look. So we put together a little wish list of the names likely to get the call from Penn State, what the wish list would look like. And we all know the answer to it at this point, right? Curt Cignetti. I don't think it's a coincidence that this weekend, as Curt Cignetti authors the signature win of his time at Indiana thus far, 2 years into one of the best program turnarounds we've ever seen, I think, in this short amount of time, considering the area, considering what Indiana had been in college football, brief bouts of success, oddly enough, with Kalen DeBoer last time on Dragon Ball Z. And so I think Curt Cignetti is going to be the first person they call, and he's probably going to make a run into the college football playoff, a potentially deep one. So it would require you to potentially wait, which makes the Matt Rule situation really interesting. A lot of talk about the relationship between him and the brass at Penn State and what he could potentially bring. Matt Rule, another guy in year 3 at Nebraska, usually year 3 in the past. Temple, Baylor is when they kind of took the step, but he's someone that knows how to do this, knows how to come in and inject some life. MJR 57. I don't like that that's kind of Mike Jr. in my old college football number. I would take Marcus Freeman. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I think it's clickbait. I just don't see a world where Marcus Freeman is going to leave Notre Dame for Penn State. I understand Penn State could make Godfather money offer. I think Notre Dame, who re-upped Marcus last year after their run to the playoffs, is probably paying him pretty well. Lane Kiffin's the wild card to me, because I hear you, Crimson Fire. If Lane Kiffin leaves, a lot of people have always thought it would be back to Bama after his time as assistant there, being in the SEC, like all these things that are advantageous about the position. But again, if I'm talking about Penn State's wish list, guy is always going to draw attention. He has created an incredible team in Ole Miss who's winning damn near double-digit seasons as well. Marcus Freeman is a choke artist. Give me a break. We all saw what happened last year. We're done with that stuff. I don't need to entertain that, even though I just did. But Lane Kiffin, again, if you want to take the next step offensively, I think Lane Kiffin has shown you no matter where he's at, the offense is going to hum, especially as of late now as he's matured later in his coaching career. Eli Drinkwitz becomes really interesting. I think he's done a phenomenal job at Missouri. I know they lost this last weekend, but what he's done with that program, having them consistently contending year in and year out, I think is incredible. And then this is just a flyer of a name I saw a while ago, Jeff Brom, and the job he's done at multiple stops, Purdue, now at Louisville. Who he is an offensive mind, true air raid guy. You're going to see these quarterbacks go out here and sling it. But defensively, I also think that's a group that creates a lot of chaos. So I think it's an interesting one there. And I do think it's going to be someone that's got previous head coaching experience. I've seen some people bring up Urban Meyer's name. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I do think it's a job that at this point is about winning a national championship. That's what this year was about. And that's why this result of firing James Franklin came about, because they felt like they had gone all in on this and had their dreams dashed at a time where they feel really close. What Penn State was on paper was what Ohio State was on paper last year, was what Michigan was on paper the 2 years before, which is a team that was veteran in all the right areas, that brought in a highly paid coordinator, had the quarterback, and thought they could go. G. Lloyd 33, Matt Campbell's going to be interesting. I genuinely would ask Penn State fans if that move would excite them. I think Matt Campbell is a damn good football coach. I think he's been great about making the best out of what they've got available year in and year out at Iowa State, right? This year, they were ranked in the top 25 for a while. Rocco Becht plays well at quarterback. That's something we've seen is pretty consistent for them as well. You lose 2 NFL wide receivers. You go back to being a multi-tight end group. So I think he can coach. I just wonder if that would register on the meter the way that a lot of these other coaches might. Same kind of goes with Manny Diaz, a guy who was there as a coordinator, did some really good things, but the tenure with Miami, even if the tenure with Duke now has shown some interesting stuff, I do think Manny Diaz could be really interesting. Do I think DeBoer is going to last at Alabama? Yeah, I do. I've been on record. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he has a really good chance to stick around there for a while, because they look like a team that's a college football playoff team. They look like a team that's probably the best team in the SEC right now, the way they've been playing. So that's kind of the look. I'm sure this is going to get slow played, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot leaked, and I'm sure Jimmy Sexton is going to get a lot of his clients paid off of this. This will be an offseason that's already got a bunch of openings, right? We knew Virginia Tech, UCLA were already job openings, but Penn State is going to be the belle of the ball in this one, and there'll be plenty of debate about what kind of job Penn State is, but I do think this. Ty the GOAT, Mike Gundy or Dabo sleepers. I mean, listen, we've seen Dabo get frustrated at times with Clemson. He already did the press conference this year talking about, I would go somewhere else. He'd be interesting because, man, people can have a lot of criticism of Dabo, and it's good, a down year for them, no doubt. Guy can build a program. Guy can recruit his ass off. It really is tough. So, Crimson Fire, I agree. By the way, I do think Garrett Nussmeier is not well. Let's talk about the Hoosiers, shall we? Let's talk about Indiana's statement win from this last weekend. Indiana goes into Autzen, which is an incredibly tough place to play. And Kurtz, again, I feel for you, Indiana fans, having to talk about your team's win for a brief second before everyone mentions your coach's name in this job, talking about Penn State, talking about him leaving, it stinks. So I want to show you something that's going to make you feel good. How about this? Indiana with an incredible play this weekend against Dante Moore. This, to me, is at the heart of why Indiana was able to go in and win. Fernando Mendoza, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in college football. Shout out to my buddy Nate Tice over at Yahoo Sports, who was first on the Fernando Mendoza wagon this offseason, said he was QB1 for him in the upcoming NFL draft. You see why the guy can spray it anywhere. But I want to give some love to this defense that I thought performed incredibly well, built really well. Mikel Kamara on the defensive line, just one of the guys that can get after the quarterback for you. But you're going to look at this play right here, and we're going to get a little show and go from the defense right now. What Indiana did well was change the picture on Dante Moore at quarterback. Young, incredibly talented player for Oregon, but one that looked like he got a bit sped up by what was going on around him. Because what you're going to see right here is you got a bunch of guys up at the line of scrimmage, right? 6 guys up here. It looks like everyone's going to be coming. And what you're going to end up getting is guys dropping out on this side, coverage rolling down this way and moving around. And then you're going to get players coming here. So it ends up being a simulated pressure where guys are going to come free where they're not accounted for. And so, again, you watch here, it looks before the snap. If we go back a little bit, it looks like, all right, they might be in a too high look. He's creeping down a little bit. But then as we get going here and we get closer towards the snap, now he backs off. Now you get these 2 guys both darting out here. This linebacker adds in, and then this nose tackle is going to go up for a second to buy up the offensive lineman and then back out right here. So now again, all these guys dropping off, it ends up, and you can't see on the back end here, he's going to move back here. He's going to move over here, and this linebacker is going to come all the way from here and run down the middle. So it ends up looking like Tampa 2. Where before the snap, maybe it's too high, maybe it's single high with a guy creeping down here near the box. And now you create Tampa 2 out of this, and you still are only sending 4 guys towards the quarterback. And now because of the way you set that up before the snap, 2 of them are coming scot-free in the quarterback's face. So panics, doesn't know where to go for the ball, sack for Indiana. So again, they did a really good job of showing one thing, presenting one thing, and then timing it up with the snap. On the road even. Home crowd's supposed to have that advantage. They time it up with the snap and manage to get him down. So an incredible job there by the Indiana defense. Just one of the many plays that they were able to make that day, harassing Dante Moore at quarterback. Fernando Mendoza, though, just an incredible player. 20 of 31, 215 yards. We know the one interception in that game, but the guy's an arm that can put it anywhere. The guy's got a receiver in Elijah Surratt that is as smooth a route runner as there is in college football, maybe south of Jeremiah Smith and Jordan Tyson at Arizona State. An incredible team and an incredible job there. So plenty of love for the Hoosiers, man. It's not hype if it's real. The defense is complicated, but then simple like we saw there. The offense is just going to RPO you to death. There are only a few plays in that game where they really have to deviate from that to make a play. Other than that, they're going to hand the ball off. I think Fernando Mendoza's involvement in the run game, 6 carries for 31 yards. He's got as good a sense as any quarterback I've watched in college football this year for when to pull the ball and keep a defense honest. He had some huge first downs in this game, huge first downs when they baptized Illinois early in the season. So I think it's incredibly real for Indiana this year and incredibly fun to watch so far this season. So, and seems to be the only way that team can score in the red zone. Hey, if it works, it works. Eventually, that's, what's it, the line from Remember the Titans? It's like Novocaine, give it time, and eventually it works. That opens stuff up for everyone else. That's a huge factor. It's why more often than not, having a mobile quarterback or someone who can at least present that threat in college football is almost a must at this point. So speaking of that, good segue into our boy Ty Simpson and Alabama. Big win for them against Missouri this last weekend. The Tide, coming off that win again, Florida State, In this day and age in college football, I think the first few weeks of the regular season are going to continue to produce a lot of results like this. Just a lot of change for Ty Simpson. I get he was on the roster, but he was still a guy that was in a different position for the first time. I think we look at a few of the best quarterbacks in college football and see who they were week one change drastically as the coaches kind of learned. All right, once live bullets are hitting, what's the play calling look for these guys? So let's take a look at Ty Simpson again this past weekend. Great outing against Missouri, 23 of 31, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns against no interceptions. And the job, he's put up big yardage everywhere. I want to show you one play in particular, though, that impressed me. Let's go. Yes, here we go. All right. This was a throw under pressure on a big third down in this game. And I want you to notice 2 things. One is the job the running back does on this play. I don't think this is Jam Miller. I can't see the number well enough on this play. But you're going to watch. So going into this protection, we got 5 big guys up front, and it looks like they have these 5 right here based on what you're going to watch. These 2 guys are going to slide out this way for these 2 players at the snap, which leads me to believe O-line might think that the running back has this linebacker here. You're going to see on the snap, that's not the case. The running back's going to go out here looking like he thinks he has this guy and then come back at just the last second to take enough off him. But right here on the back end, we're going to end up with cover 3. So this corner is going to drop, the safety is going to drop here, and this DB is going to drop out right here. And you're going to see a route here that stops up, and just watch Ty Simpson. The toughness under pressure for him to get this pass off and keep this drive moving at a huge juncture in this game for Alabama. Goes up, change the protection. Key the running back with motion. So again, you've got all these guys coming right now. So we've got 6, 5 up here, 6 back here to block 6. But he originally starts out going towards the right. What we always talked about, so I was a former college offensive lineman, what we always talked about, the running backs have time and space to make the offensive line right. So this is a great play by the running back, just being a football player. I don't know who was responsible, who was wrong, and how it was called up front, but I know the running back has time and depth to go and make that right, and he takes advantage of it here, gets just enough of him right there to give Ty Simpson that little extra half second to get this pass off. But you still look, stuff around Ty's feet, guys in his face right here, and what's he do? Throws that on a rope downfield. First down, Alabama. They keep the drive alive. And that's just one of many for him. Ty Simpson was a blue chip recruit that I feel like we just did not talk enough. Him, Julian Sand at Ohio State, we didn't talk enough about these guys early in the season. Now it's gotten, you see him in the interview, the aw shuck stuff, it's great. What he does on the field, as strong an arm as we've got in this group, I think him, Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore, probably the strongest arm strength guys I've watched so far this season, but dynamic enough athlete to once again buy some time, scramble if he needs to, get out there and get after stuff. The Alabama defense continues to step up in recent weeks too, so this is a team that I think has done really well for themselves. Mizzou, they've got a chance. Alabama on defense was able to stymie one of the best running backs in college football. I still think Missouri has plenty of chance. They're legit up front. Bo Prabula has been solid at quarterback. The 2 interceptions this game, not great. You look at their remaining schedule, too. Auburn, we saw them give Georgia hell. That could always be the same case. Vanderbilt's a tough out. A&M, it's life in the SEC. This is just the world everyone lives in right now. So you're always going to have difficulty in the schedule here. Alabama's second in national title odds, by the way. I'm buying it. They look like the best team in the SEC right now, and I'll give them that respect. Let's go to a little overreaction or not here and take a look at some big other reactions from the weekend that we have going on. Overreaction or not. The Georgia Bulldogs are pretenders. 2010 win over Auburn this weekend. 20 straight points scored after being down. And this game not without controversy, right? The goal line fumble by Auburn that ends up being the last chance they had at points before Georgia goes off and rattles off 20 State. Kirby Smart full-on conning the refs into believing that he didn't call a timeout, that he was clapping, even though we got him in 4K out here clearly calling a timeout in that game. So certainly, listen, it's like a flop. I don't knock Kirby for trying to do it. That's on the refs for believing that and not seeing what was a clear timeout. But I'll say overreaction. Georgia's problem solvers. You saw it again in this game. Problem solved their way through Tennessee after they came out firing. In this case, the offense was struggling, and they found a way to problem solve through that. And I think this week, Georgia's a fantastic challenge. for this Ole Miss offense. Very biased overreaction. Not really. What bias do I have towards Georgia? I don't care anything about these teams. Root for Notre Dame. To me, it's over. And Georgia, the way their defense is structured is a great test for offenses like Tennessee, offenses like Ole Miss that want to spread you out, get the ball on the perimeter to then run up the middle against light box counts. Georgia tends to do well with light box counts. Kirby is the greatest salesman in the game. There is no doubt. He's a master of his craft. And he learned it from Nick, because no greater salesman existed than Nick Saban when his team was on the cusp of the college football playoff with the media at the end of every year. And that is said, absolutely complimentary. Overreaction or not, Urban Meyer's a realistic candidate for Penn State. I'm going to say overreaction. Urban Meyer seems to have a pretty cushy gig. I just don't know at this point, like far enough removed. I get that he's always going to be a name that comes up in a lot of this stuff, but to me, I don't buy this one. I just think this is one where you've got too many more straight lines to this in Curt Cignetti and Matt Rule that mean you don't have to get there. Maybe if they whiff on both of those and end up desperate, but I think if push comes to shove, if they don't get Curt Cignetti, I'd have a hard time not seeing Matt Rule make that jump to Penn State after this. Overreaction or not, Oklahoma had a better chance without John Mateer against Texas. I'm going to say overreaction on this one as well. I know I'm majoring in that right now, and I know turnovers kind of sank them, but you turn on a lot of that tape. There's still some big-time throws in there. There's still some great reactions. It's just that Texas defense is really good. They got a bunch of pressure on them in certain spots. I don't think Hawkins was going to be able to be the guy that necessarily got over that defense. It was going to be a low-scoring affair, and unfortunately gave the ball away. It's admirable. John Mateer, was he maybe a little bit less than himself? It looked like moving around running. Sure. Maybe he was a little bit guarded on trying to get that hand hit because of the nature of the injury. But no, I think that's an overreaction. I don't think they would have had a better chance in this one without him. I think, again, this is just as much about Texas and Sark calling a great game on the other side, simplifying the equation for your quarterback that had been struggling. And then, of course, the Texas defense, which we knew was great coming into this game and went out and showed you why. All right. Overreaction or not, Oklahoma State's shirtless section is one of the most electric in the game. That would be Section 231, and we're going to put some respect on their name. So this last weekend, I was on the call for Oklahoma State hosting Houston. And this is a game that didn't go Oklahoma State's way. They'd fired Mike Gundy a couple weeks ago this season, fired Todd Grantham, the defensive coordinator, after that. They're searching right now. It's a tough time of transition for that program, and I have a lot of respect for the way that Doug Meacham, the interim head coach, and that staff, Clint Bowen, the interim defensive coordinator, are going out here and trying to handle their business. But that crowd stepped up big. So we're going to look second half of this game. You're down already. Houston comes out of the locker room. And we saw in the booth, it started with 4 shirtless men in Section 231 whipping towels and shirts around their head. And it just kept growing. No matter what happened on the prior drive, we would look up in between commercial breaks and see more and more dudes flocking to Section 231. It became Section 230, 231, 232. There were kids. There were adults. Everyone was getting in on the party here. It was a viral moment coming off this game, but to me, it was also a symbol of exactly why college football is great, why college sports are great. It's the crowds, it's the atmosphere, it's dumb stuff like this, it's beer snakes, it's every bit of it. Look at the score. It's 30-10 in the middle of the third quarter. Things didn't get better from there for Oklahoma State. There were a couple of moments, but what was awesome, Oklahoma scored a late touchdown in this game, and the first thing the players did who scored was look up and start waving towels at that section. There was still a connection between fan base and players there. In a day and age where people talk about maybe that's going away with the portal and everything that's happened to the sport, I saw it in its purest form, a rose blooming through concrete in an environment that right now is going through, again, a lot of pain, a lot of turnover, a lot of turmoil, and they still found this moment here. So it was awesome stuff. My only regret is we couldn't get our sideline reporter, Jared Greenberg, up there shirtless himself in that section. But I have a feeling the Section 231 crew, they already got T-shirts and merch out there. They're going to be back and better than ever each and every week. They were loud. They were chanting. It was incredible. So salute to them. That is absolutely not an overreaction. That was, I know they do that fan base of the week thing all year long on College Game Day. These guys got to be up there, at least in the conversation, because that was marvelous. All right, Last but not least, let's get to the quarterback trust tree. So I was asked to put together a pyramid of sorts of quarterbacks that I would trust to lead their team to the national championship. So in my mind, this is equal parts who's a great quarterback and whose team still realistically has a path toward the title, where that quarterback would be a part of it that lifts them there. That's not just along for the ride. So here we go. Here goes nothing. We're going to start with number one. To me, it's Fernando Mendoza. The guy could truly, watching that Oregon game back this weekend was unbelievable. The guy can put the ball wherever he wants. It's on a rope every time. There is no throw on the field that he can't access. And his timing with his receivers is remarkable. So I'll give Fernando Mendoza that respect. You guys call me a homer all you want. I'm always late to market on the Notre Dame takes as we look at Tier 2. We talked about Ty Simpson before. All the physical tools are there, really putting it together. Kalen DeBoer knows a thing or two about developing quarterbacks. No surprise here. But CJ Carr at Notre Dame has been incredible this season. A year ago, Notre Dame made a run to a national championship appearance with Riley Leonard at quarterback with an offense that majored on the ground game. Him, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price as these hammers, just trying to wear teams down. The defense was incredible. And this year, Notre Dame started off. Redshirt freshman quarterback going in there, trying to make it happen. Down on the road against Miami, then at home against Texas A&M. And Notre Dame fans came out of those games scratching their heads about a lot. Wasn't the quarterback. He's been an absolute monster so far this season. I think I saw 20th in overall yards in terms of yards per completion. He's at second in college football. Notre Dame offense has completely changed shape. They push the ball down the field all the time. They already have more plays of 20-plus yards in the passing game this season, I believe, than they did all of last year. And to have a player come in that young and have this kind of poise and swagger and confidence and to unlock the passing game of the Irish offense that absolutely still bona fide contenders. We saw them rise up again in the polls in that game against USC this week. Going to go a long way in deciding that. So I got CJ Carr in that spot. And then the bottom of the pyramid here, Carson Beck, steady as they go. He's come back. He's found his joy at Miami. He's been incredible behind that offensive line for a passing offense that maybe hasn't been super explosive all the time, but is deadly consistent. He's going to put the ball where it needs to be. He's going to eat up zones. Dante Moore is probably the one with the best chance to rise in this group. Uber talented, an absolute cannon for an arm. A little rattled this last week. Julian Sand, awesome. We know he's got a ton of weapons to work with at Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith, all these guys, but he looks really good. He kind of reminds me of Ty Simpson in a lot of ways. Same sort of movement patterns, pretty strong arm as well. Marcel Reed at Texas A&M is the real interesting one in here, but I trust him at the helm of a team that I do believe is a national championship contender at Texas A&M. He might be towards the bottom of this list if I were to rank all these guys in a line of quarterback, but they're really trying to give him every opportunity to go out here and be a guy that can turn it loose in the air. They've got great receivers in that room that they've portaled in for this season. So Marcel Reed and then Jaden Maiava. Notre Dame's going to see him this weekend. USC is in what looks like a playoff elimination game. I know that loss to Illinois earlier in the year felt pretty damning, but after a win at home against Michigan, which was kind of their statement win this so far in their Big Ten tenure, this is another guy. Everywhere in the field's accessible. Mekhi Lemon looks like one of the best wide receivers in college football, and a large part of that is due to the fact that his quarterback can always get him the football in advantageous spots. Stop me if you've heard this before. Lincoln Riley looks like he's got another dude on his hands. We saw Maiava at the end of last week at USC the end of last year, performing incredibly well. And this year has been more the same so far. So interesting test. Notre Dame defense been playing a lot better in the last 3 weeks. They will get a much stiffer test. They'll see the best quarterback that they're going to see for the rest of the season in that game on Saturday, which could be the last in the series. So I'm sure everyone in the comments completely agrees with my assessment of the quarterbacks around college football, and we'll all be very nice about it as we do this in the coming weeks, trying to continue to take the temperature of the quarterbacks we think can help a team win a national championship here soon. So that's what we've got right now. Again, as always, make sure you pop in here, 6 o'clock Eastern, every Tuesday for the rest of the football season. We're going to take you guys through everything we see over the weekend in college football, talk about the contenders, talk about the jobs that open up, respond to your questions and comments as always on the BR app, on the Bleacher Report YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.